There's a detail buried in old Cold War reconnaissance reports that modern analysts still bring up in classified briefings. Not because it predicted a weapon, or a doctrine, or a breakthrough, but because a type of camouflage designed in the 1960s continues to fool modern detection systems, including certain forms of machine vision AI. It wasn't high-tech, it wasn't even expensive. In fact, it relied on principles so basic that field engineers back then barely understood why it worked as well as it did. Yet it consistently defeated aerial photography, border surveillance lenses, and early image-interpreting computers. And today, when researchers test historical concealment techniques against modern AI object recognition, the same Cold War method still produces false negatives. It slips past the machine not through stealth material, but through confusion. Vision, biological or artificial, needs boundaries. This form of camouflage destroys boundaries to the point that the object becomes statistical noise, indistinguishable from terrain. It's one of the Cold War's forgotten innovations, and the fact that it still works says more about the limits of visual algorithms than most people realize. During the late 60s and early 70s, the United States and the Soviet Union were beginning to experiment with automated target recognition. Computers were slow but improving, and analysts hoped they could eventually sort images faster than human interpreters. That pressure pushed engineers to find camouflage that would resist both human observers and early algorithmic detection. The breakthrough came when researchers noticed that machines struggled not with colour, but with randomness. They couldn't easily parse patterns that had no stable geometry. So certain Cold War units began using what's now known among niche historians as stochastic fragmentation. Instead of repeating shapes or large patches of colour, this camouflage relied on extremely fine, irregular specks, streaks, and microtextures layered in several directions. The goal wasn't blending in. It was dissolving into the background by overwhelming any system trying to define edges, corners, or outlines. To understand why it works today, it helps to know how modern detection algorithms look for objects. Many systems rely on edge finding, contrast mapping, and pattern consistency. If the outline of a person, vehicle, or structure appears with stable geometry, the system flags it. Stochastic fragmentation breaks every one of those rules. Instead of a clean edge, the silhouette becomes a chaotic gradient full of micro-interruptions. Instead of uniform contrast, the surface becomes a shifting texture that blends into the background's statistical noise. And instead of recognizable geometry, the object becomes a patchwork of micro-distortions that confuses both the algorithm and the human reviewing the feed. Recent independent field tests with civilian drones have shown that a person wearing a modern recreation of this Cold War pattern produces lower detection confidence scores than someone in both digital camouflage and traditional ghillie suits. The drone's edge-finding routines hesitate, fail, and sometimes classify the target as brush, rock, or low-contrast debris. The original Cold War engineers had no idea this would happen in the era of machine vision, yet their design accidentally aligned with the weaknesses of modern recognition systems. Recreating this technique doesn't require advanced materials. It simply requires layering unpredictable texture. Start with a surface, whether clothing, a tarp, or a lightweight cover, that already matches the general tone of your environment. Then apply extremely fine speckling and narrow streaking in multiple tones, keeping the distribution uneven. The key is to avoid repetition. No two areas should look like they follow a pattern. A simple way to do this is to use a small sponge, a handful of bristly grasses, or even a toothbrush dipped in diluted paint. Tap or flick micro marks across the fabric in a way that creates thousands of tiny variations. After the first layer dries, rotate the material and apply a second layer at a different directional bias. The end result is a surface that confuses sensors by refusing to commit to any identifiable shape. One practical example is covering equipment in the field. A modern backpack with digital camo still forms firm geometric edges, but if you apply a stochastic overlay using a thin mesh sprayed lightly with multiple tones, the outline begins to break down even under harsh lighting. Another example involves building a temporary hide. Instead of using large vegetation clumps, lay down a micro-fragmented cloth over a faded tarp. Interestingly, drone footage of similar setups frequently shows the hide merging into the surrounding terrain far more reliably than foliage-based concealment. This technique teaches a principle that remains surprisingly universal. Visual systems, whether human or machine, struggle when deprived of predictable edges. The Cold War developers weren't chasing stealth in the modern sense. They were chasing ambiguity. When you deny an observer clarity, the observer hesitates. In the Cold War, hesitation meant safety. Today, it still means lower detection confidence for both human spotters and automated systems. For survivalists, filmmakers, wildlife observers, and anyone studying Cold War fieldcraft, this system offers a tool that doesn't rely on heavy suits or perfect environmental matching. It works in forests, brushlands, rocky ground, and even winter landscapes because it's not pretending to be the environment. It's attacking the visual process itself. That's what makes it evergreen, and why researchers still discuss it when evaluating how machine vision fails. If this exploration into the forgotten world of Cold War camouflage deepened your understanding, make sure to subscribe to In the Beginning and share this guide with fellow history and survival enthusiasts. The more we uncover these overlooked innovations, the richer our understanding of both past and present becomes.